Hey guys, welcome to our video series we call Stories and Songs. And we put this together because we've had a lot of requests over the years to just find out where the songs came from and the inspiration behind them, and also the recordings that go along with them as well. So let's just dive in here. We're going to talk about Legacy of Love, one of my favorite songs to sing, and it means a whole lot to me. I wrote this song with one of my good friends, Cindy Morgan. And we've written a few songs together over the years, like Just As I Am and Legacy of Love, of course, and Who Do You Say That I Am? And so I had this experience here when we moved down. We live kind of out in the country in southern Middle Tennessee, and it really is a slice of Americana. And we quickly found out that the people around us care about us, and we were just so blown away and taken with the love and the community around us. It was just amazing. One of those guys, his name was Ed, and he was captain of the volunteer fire department around here, and he helped us out all the time when we didn't even have to ask. One time our bus got stuck in the driveway when we were headed out on tour. He was here in 15 minutes with a tow truck that pulled us out. We didn't even miss a beat. And I always talk about how I walked out one time and under Lori's windshield wiper, there was a little note that said, "I saw down at the store your tags were out of date and wanted to let you know before you got in trouble." So he just was always that kind of person. One morning I was working out in the yard, and his wife drove up, and she said that he had passed away from a heart attack very young. And it really got me thinking about the people that we lose and the roles that they play in our lives. And immediately I thought, who's going to take his place? I mean, he is just such a servant, to everyone around him. Of course, the answer to that is I have to take his place. You have to take his place. That's the kind of thing that we all have to be doing. So I had this kind of going around in my head about this wonderful experience in knowing this guy. And also my father is a great example of that too. He's been an incredible influence on my life and just a real servant. Bill Gaither called him once a spirit of peace. That's what he called my dad. So that definitely sums him up. But so I went to a co-writing session with Cindy Morgan, and I think we met up in town somewhere. And I started telling her I want to write a song about this, and I had some of the lines like, "He was the kind of man that good men talk about," and she sat there for a second. She said, "All right." She said, "This sounds like it's going to be a song that you sing for a long time." I was like, "I really think it's going to be." And she said, "Okay, I've had this hook that I've been holding back for a long time, and I've been saving it for my own father." And she said, "It really is about the legacy of love that you leave behind." So we went from there, and together we wrote, "How to love your neighbor, how to love your wife, wrap your arms around your children and pray with them each night. Thank God for all the good things, 'cause the good things are enough. It's the ties that bind, that leave behind a legacy of love." And so we titled the Birmingham video Legacy of Love, because it is a story that meant so much to me. And in the process of that too, in filming that DVD, Legacy of Love, we wanted some kind of cutaways where I would sit down and talk to some of the people here in town that are making a real difference in people's lives. And so we went up to the historic Campbell Station store down the road, and just sat around, and we talked about Ed and things like that. And I was really taken by the way this turned out, because I think it got to feature some real heroes in our community. Hope you enjoy it. There's a lot of people who just wouldn't believe that places like this still exist. But here we are, a place for good food and talking with great people. You can almost hear the conversations echoing off the walls of generations of people talking things over with their friends and their family. It wasn't far from here that I met a man named Ed Martin, and he really impacted my life and a lot of people in this community as well. So I got a few people together to help me tell his story, because while I just knew him a couple of years, these people have known him for a lifetime. Hey guys, how y'all doing?
Hey, hey.
I thank you for getting together with me here. I wrote this song in honor of Ed, you know, after my experience with him, and you know, he was just such a great guy. One of our first experiences with him was one morning we went out to our car, and my wife, under the windshield wiper, she found a little note that said, "I saw you down at the store and your tags are out on your car, and I wanted to tell you before you got caught unexpectedly." You know, so that was just the kind of guy he was.
Well, you know that just a little short time that you met him, how much of an impression he made on you, and how you figured that we've known him for 20, 30 years. And he was always, I think if you looked at the dictionary for volunteer, his picture ought to be there. He was 25 years, he was a reserve deputy, free. And on top of that, he was our fire chief. And sometimes we'd have a fire and he'd show up in a police car. One of Ed's dreams was to build a building for the community. And I can remember many nights we'd be getting back in, folding up the hoses and filling the truck. And they'd get a piece of paper out, and he'd draw it on there. He said, "Someday we're going to have a 5-bay fire hall, and an office, and a meeting room, and something that's be good for the whole community." And there's not many people, after they die, their legacy keeps going.
We were in business for 23 years, and of the 23 years, it was very few days that Edward was not in the store, sometimes 3 and 4 times a day. So we got to know Edward really well. And if it was anything that needed doing, if we needed help with anything, Edward was there to help us.
Seems to be a real common experience.
I met Ed when I was probably about 12 years old, and we had a pretty big structure fire in Kalelka. One of the old buildings burnt. I was only like 13 at the time, and everybody else saying, "What's that kid doing here?" And Ed told him, said, "Leave that kid alone, he's with us, he's with the fire department." And about 24 years later, I had to take Ed's place on the fire department. That's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. A lot of people say that he was their hero. He truly was my hero.
Well, I definitely thought this story was worth telling, because there are guys like this in communities all across the country that we need to be reminded every once in a while not to take them for granted, you know, to thank them, to go the extra mile, to appreciate them for what they're doing, because you never know when they'll be taken away from us.
Ed Martin had a humble spirit for his fellow man, and his funeral was the biggest one that our community has ever seen. The funeral procession was 7 miles long. That's a legacy that's hard to beat.
He was the kind of man that good men talk about. The way he showed his faith was how he lived it out. His hands were rough and calloused, and his shoes were old and torn, and the lines that framed his smile were lines so well and deep and warm. So what will be remembered of what he left behind? What will stand the test of time? How to love your neighbor, how to love your wife, wrap your arms around your children and pray with them each night. Thank God for all the good things, 'cause the good things are enough. It's the ties that bind and leave behind a legacy of love. He worked a second job to make the ends all meet, but somehow managed to always be there for me. Taught me how to listen, how to stand for what is right, and he showed me all the things that really matter in this life. How to love your neighbor, how to love your wife, wrap your arms around your children and pray with them each night. Thank God for all the good things, 'cause the good things are enough. The ties that bind and leave behind a legacy of love. Oh, and as I look into the eyes of my daughters and my sons, I hope I've stood for something that they'll want to carry on. 'Cause life is far too short not to finally realize that it's long enough to make a difference in someone's life. So I'm gonna love my neighbor, and I'm gonna love my wife, wrap my arms around my children